I'm sitting there. This is like before I really started to unravel. I say, Kevin, we're in a cult. What the hell's the name of that show? It was all about the Mormons. I said, we're in a cult.
Hello and welcome to the Sobriety Bestie Podcast. My name is Kirsten and I am super excited you are here today for a great episode we have with Monica Richardson, who is a filmmaker of the documentary The 13th Step and has been leading the Deprogramming AA, a lot of work through her YouTube channel and through her Deprogramming Facebook groups to help people unpack the harm from Alcoholics Anonymous. So I'm super excited you're here today, Monica, and you have been highly requested in the comments on my YouTube.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Kristen. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Very excited to be here.
So I'd like to start this off with giving us an idea of how long you were in AA and when did you leave AA?
I was in AA 36 years and I left 2011. So I've been gone a long time now. It feels great. I can't believe it's been that long. And I left because a woman and her daughter got murdered. It's really what took me out of Alcoholics Anonymous was Christine and Sandra Cass in 2010 were murdered by a guy who was court ordered to Alcoholics Anonymous by a court, by a judge, and by healthcare professionals. And with all of my time, I had no idea that they were court ordering violent and sex offenders to meetings. When I found that out, I was like, why? Like, why would you do this? Then I found out that they have been ordering sex offenders. You're like, hello, so as far back as the 70s, because it got into the court system in the 1940s. They felt like this was, oh, look at this. Isn't this great? This is where we can put them. This is the diversion we can use. So that, even though the safety issue came up from a girl who came in, a young woman, 21, came into my women's meeting sobbing and talking about what this guy did to her, I was like, what the? Like, this shit's still going on. Like, wow. And so from the stuff with Callie led to me calling a friend, acquaintance from Hawaii, who was then the running New York Alcoholics Anonymous, the general service in the big building on Riverside Drive and 3 stories of offices. So he ran that and he turned me on to Paul Cleary, who was once a delegate, once a board member, who wrote this 7-page letter. And this 7-page letter was horrific because it not only detailed how problematic and systemic predatory sexual harassment, but much more than that, taking advantage of newer people, both men and women. They were targeting women who were single with children. And so that was this in the letter, reading it. And to top it off, he told me that when he wrote the letter and brought it to the board, they made him wait a year for them to read it to the board. So then when I went back to my group, the women were crying and we were like, we have to do something. This is horrible. No one knew. A lot of women, people with more than 20 years. There must have been 10 of us with the kind of time. Really nice women, great women, going like, they're court ordering like violent offenders and sex offenders? Yeah. So, that was like intense. And then there was sort of unraveling because I went online and I put in Alcoholics Anonymous, sexual predators. And back then there were so many stories of people getting arrested and they showed the picture and that they were violent offenders. And there was another killing that I put in my film. I think it was somewhere in the middle. I don't want to say what's Michigan or what state it was, but oh my God. And I started to unravel. I started to ask a lot of questions and I found a site called the Orange Papers. And that is still, I think you can find it. They brought that back up. And I would spend like 2 hours a night reading this blog. And then I found another blog called Thinkin' Thinkin', which was filled with, started by a woman who was not in AA, but saw how harmful it was. And she started a blog where people could talk about, everybody hated it in there, and they made fun of me because I was still in it. And, but doesn't matter. I still had a place to communicate with people about what I was finding And so I really did find support there. In fact, she connected me to the board member who wound up in my movie, who also then I released his entire interview onto YouTube once I put my film for free on YouTube, which is now a couple of years. Originally, it went on to Amazon, and it was there for a number of years. And then I was like, you know what? People are right. Like, it should just be for free. I'm not making any money here. It's not about that. Let me just finally put it up there, and it takes work because I own the film. I had to clear the film. I had to insure the film. They're not easy to make. Like, I was like, oh my God, like if I knew how hard it was to make like a real documentary, that even to put it at a film festival, you have to jump through all these hoops. And you have to clear everything, like all the archival footage of people drinking back in the 20s and all that. That stuff is so expensive. It's like for every second, it's like $75 or some crazy thing. And sometimes it's $150 per second, like per second, not minutes. So we didn't use it all, but it was a huge learning curve. And I don't think if I didn't have the passion and didn't see firsthand what was going on, and that it was still going on 35 years later, that I would like just push through and do it.
Wow. So it sounds like you started seeing more clearly some of the underbelly of AA, the sexual predation and people losing their lives, and that made you question what you were in, or how did that pop you out of your, I guess that's called brainwashing? I know I was brainwashed, so I don't want to put words on your experience, but...
Yeah. I would say that I was. And I thought about this. I was watching some of your videos, different segments of them, and thought about like how I held on to that critical thinking in the beginning. Right? But so how does it happen? And then I started to get really curious about how does it happen so quickly, and went through that deep dive. I feel like there's so much that I can tell you, but at what point do you want me to talk about?
So the violence and the predation, did that awaken something in you? I mean, for me, I had a question of like when my friend took his own life in AA, and he wasn't allowed to get outside help. He wasn't allowed to get professional help until he finished his 5th step, and he didn't make it. I knew, like, just in my core, I felt like AA is responsible for his life. He's not alive because the ideology that was in his head that said, this is it, and if it doesn't work for you, do more of it. And so that, for me, was my first awakening in the brainwashing, where I thought, my thought was, what the fuck am I even in if this is okay? That didn't get me out of AA, but it was the first clink in my armor of brainwashing. Was like, what the fuck am I even in if this is okay? So I'm curious if you had any moments like that with the violence or the predation where you were having any thoughts that helped you see the light.
Yeah. So when Callie was in the meeting and she was crying and talking about this guy 13-stepping her and moving into her apartment, and she couldn't get him out, and there were lots of other young women, like they're all in their early 20s, and all of them were so cute and so pretty too. Like that was the other part. But let me tell you something. It happens to people who are not so attractive, and they'll prey on large women who really maybe have been ignored and neglected. And so there's those guys who know in OA, and that's like another whole story, who go out into that group and do that to women who have eating disorders. When Callie came, like something just really happened. But also, my father died in 2008. And because I was in AA, there were things that I did and treated my dad that I realized were wrong, because he eventually began to have his drink. He stopped drinking on his own, hated AA for 20 years, and then started drinking again. And I got back into his life. He moved himself, I think, into a place in Vegas. There's something about my father's death, like, kind of shifted me and started to see what my priorities were. I think it's like something shaking. If you say there's the armor that's up with the brainwashing, and so it sort of cracked. And then when Callie shows up and tells this story, and I got to know her, when I brought it to the groups in the meeting, the resistance I saw also was that helping me wake up and go, what's wrong with you people? Like, so I was a GSR. I had swore that I wouldn't do that stuff anymore for like decades. I moved here. I was 8 years sober, and then from Hawaii. And I was like, you're not doing that shit, Monica. Like, you're going to, whatever, live your life, pursue your dreams. And then so I didn't, but I had just decided to do that. So I was going to these stupid meetings once a month, and I went, and I was like, wow, this is like really weird. What's going on here? I could see a couple of predator guys in the group a lot of time, and yeah, some really weird stuff happened there. I would say that also though, when I had my first child and I got into therapy, it was in my 30s, that I realized I needed to do childhood abuse work and from my own childhood, and I had been assaulted as a teenager, sexually assaulted when I was drunk once, and I had never dealt with this stuff. That the therapist said, we know that you believe in this stuff with AA, but we want you to just, can you put these beliefs aside when you do the work? And I said, oh yeah, absolutely. And so they would say, it's never your fault. Children are not at fault for, and I was like, yeah, of course. But in AA, and I heard sponsor, this never happened to me. I had never had a sponsor say that shit to me. That, well, what was your part in it? Like she said, I'm sorry, I don't have that experience and I don't know what to tell you about that. Like she was more compassionate, but the stories that I heard on Stinkin' Thinking and through other people in person, I was like, wow, somebody blamed you as a 6-year-old, or you were like raped as 12, like whatever, that I was like, I couldn't believe it. So there was a beginning of unbrainwashing that began when I got into therapy, which is when I was 30, 35, 30, 35. And it really, I didn't go to meetings. So when I had children too, I also said, I knew that these children were more important. I took my baby a couple of times to like a meeting in Hollywood, and I was like, I took my baby, like, oh, I don't think I belong in here. Like, and so I knew I was okay because I had like a lot of time. I was like 13 years sober or something. And it's no big deal to not drink or use anything. And so I was really pulling back and mixing with normal people. And so I think I was slowly becoming naturally unbrainwashed, but yet there was some really hardcore, hard stuff that was still in there. And what I think is people become very rigid. They are not non-judgmental. You are become very judgmental and you become very critical, not critical thinking, but you think, oh yeah, sure. Like I was never somebody like with the whole, if you cook with alcohol, like there's people who actually think that you can't cook with alcohol. Or if you go to a restaurant and it's all burnt out, but there are people who don't take aspirin or an Excedrin or pain meds. Like I had a friend who had brain surgery and he's telling the doctor, oh, I can't because I have 40 years in NA. And I was once an addict. And the doctor's like, we're going to cut your brain. We're going to drill it open, dude. So what happens is that happens with Callie, and then that leads to what the first question you asked me in the beginning, which is me calling an old friend from Hawaii. He works in New York. He said, no, I think you need to talk to this guy in San Diego. And I call him, Paul, and he gives me the letter. He said, I think you should do a workshop. I said, oh, that sounds so great. Let's do a workshop. And so I know how to do it. I've been in service in AA for all these years. So we go to the church and we get the church. We go to the meeting, we make flyers. But when we go to the mixed meetings, because I've been kind of hiding, not really, but going to more women's meetings because I couldn't stand, and this is another part about it, over the years, the mixed meetings in Hollywood, West LA were awful. Like the vibe of the men in there and some of the women too, but it was like very male dominated, the mixed meetings, because women started fleeing to the women's meetings, small women, and even good guys were so sick of the crazy women who were like, we're going to latch on, that they went to these men's stag meetings that got bigger and bigger and bigger because they didn't like those meetings either. So those meetings became very predatory, and there were no good women like you or I, or like my beautiful sponsor Mary, or people that'd be like, hey, what's with you, man? Leave, hey, get out of here, or whatever. They were allowed to kind of really run the roost. And so I saw a very different Alcoholics Anonymous. Although LA, has probably been really bad for a long time. You had the Pacific group here. Are you familiar with the Pacific group and Clancy Ismailin? So I had women come to me years ago and tell me what he did to them. And I was told that they had to give him sexual favors. He was their sponsor. And thank God he finally died. Like he died during COVID. But I went to that meeting and we were going to film there. I was going to do one of those things and stand up when he was still alive. But then COVID came, so I never did it. But Or maybe I changed my mind. I found a smaller meeting and we did it. And that was really great. That was super good. So what happens is this the whole thing I'm telling you. So 2010 is when Christine and Sandra Cass were murdered. And I feel like with Callie, it was 2009. So I go to a women's event in like a women's conference, which I didn't like those things over there, but I went just to kind of get a feel for what the other women in Hawaii were feeling like. What's going on here? Is it bad or you guys got it covered? Now the Hawaiian men said, "Oh no, like we like take you out back and you're done. Like if we find a guy's doing that, you sexually abuse our children, you're gonna find them in the ocean." Like this is what they said to me, like straight up. And I was like, okay. That they took care of their own and they watched out for their women and their children. But there were meetings that had no Hawaiians in them. You had all the Caucasian haoles meetings that were, I think, had many predators. Even as a young woman, like my sister and I'd be like, "You feel that guy? Like these guys are like psychic vampires. You just better not, don't take a ride from this guy or that guy." And when I was there, they said, "Oh, did you hear about the murder?" And I said, "What?" And they're like, "Yeah, Christine." They thought maybe she was dating him. Turns out she wasn't dating him, but that he murdered, like he came to her house and just shot her and her little girl and her dog. And like in Makiki, like this is like, you're not from Hawaii, right? You don't know Hawaii, or do you know Hawaii?
Which island?
But it's like Oahu.
Okay.
And but it's I lived in Makiki and it's like just little like up towards the mountains of Honolulu and Waikiki's like this way. But I was like, how did that happen? And so he was not in a relationship with her, but he wanted to be in a relationship with her. And I dug and I found the story and I spoke to her best friend. I spoke to the reporter. And because I wanted to know, like, did she meet him in a meeting and he was just a regular dude who was nuts? Or no, he was court ordered there. And then that came out in the Hawaii News Now. You could see it in the Honolulu Advertiser or whatever their local paper is. And so I was like coming home, and then somebody through Stinkin' Thinking blog said, "Monica, there's been a murder out where you are in Santa Clarita." And that's Carla Brada's story. And so she was murdered by a guy who she met just 4 months prior. And he was court ordered for over that. This is really highlighted in my film for over, I want to say 25 years, 50 times. Like the mother had all of the pages of every time he was arrested. He tried to kill his own mother. But did he get, this is the part of domestic violence and with gun stuff that gets me so angry because, and they all use, if they were drunk or I got a drinking problem, more than a drug problem, but that one got used too later on. And then, "Oh, okay, we're going to send you to a rehab for a whole year." And some of those rehabs I found out, not what, like I was like 30 years sober when I found out there's normal people. There's a woman from Calabasas who's a mother in that rehab. There's a 19-year-old girl from Venice in that rehab. And then they send and pull in because they get that money from the state to go to that rehab. And you're sitting there with a chronic, I don't know what the other word, 22 decades of violent offenses, domestic violent offenses. You're not sitting next to him. And she's there, this beautiful, I don't know, forget how old she was then, in her 20s. So you talk about, boom. So that murder, the one in, I want to say Ohio, but whatever. So in another state, and then right here. And I was just like, okay, what's going on here? And then I just kept digging and digging and doing research. And then Kevin said, "I think," that's my husband. He said, "Monica, I think you better leave. I think you better leave AA because you're not going to be able to do this work." And it was such an interesting perspective because I think he was still going or he was still in it. And I was like, "What? What?" And they said, "Yeah, because there's too much resistance in there. Like you can't fix it from the inside. You have to do it from the outside." And I went, "Oh, okay." And then I said, "Well, I think I need help." And then somebody who was working with Kevin, I said, "Do you think I need a class?" And she said, "Yeah, I think you need to take a class on how to make a film." And so I went to UCLA and took like an extension class about how to make a documentary. And I wrote my little, not a thesis, but I wrote what we had to write. And he said, the teacher was an editor, longtime editor at Fox, 30 years, similar age with me. He goes, "Is this true? Are you making this up?" And I said, "No." He goes, "You better make a film." He said, "You better make this film." And so I said, yeah, I'm gonna. And then my brother-in-law hung himself also. My sisters, they were married for a short time, and he hung himself in the early, as I'm taking this film class, in the early part of 2011. He was in and out of AA, and I was trying to tell him, Brian, you do not need to go there. It's okay. Try Smart Recovery. But it was so small then. The alternatives were, Smart was really the only thing, and they weren't really online. There were no online meetings yet. When Brian hung himself, and I had to go home and deal with my sister and my mother, it was brutal. It was so sad. He was such a sweet guy. I was like, this is fucked up. Because it's not only that I hear about it and poor Carla is murdered and this beautiful woman and her 13-year-old daughter and their dog, but now my sister's guy. People need to know that there's other things. And then I went down this deep dive of that. I wouldn't call it a cult yet. I didn't see it as a cult. There was a woman I ran into, and she was like, it's a cult, it's a cult. Like, she was like, it's just like, okay, I'm right already. Like, give me a moment. Just give me a minute to see what you're seeing. I see all this danger. I want to expose it. I want people to know there's other options. And then there was the young people's thing. I think it's called the icky pot stuff.
Yeah.
Which, you familiar with that?
I've been, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I went to some of those things.
The International Conference of Young People in AA. So there's Icky Paw, but then there's also the smaller ones, right? Like we had Wacky Paw, Western area, which is like Western California and Nevada. I went to that one that was in Las Vegas.
But I went there and I went with some people and it was bad. I said, wow, this is like really flying under the radar. So I started calling the police. Did I call the FBI back then? I think I did. They were like, what do you want us to do about it? I was like, well, I think you have guys who are like 30 or 40 and there's teenagers there and they're using it a place to groom and have sex with them. And so it was, then I started to just be really disgusted by it. I started like really pull back. And the more I did that, the more I saw it. Oh, and this is the thing I loved is that when I went to my meetings, I still went to this meeting. When I heard the literature read, all of a sudden it changed. So I started to hear, did you hear that? Like, were you still going with the literature or was it when you left that you realized that it was like horse shit?
For me, it was an epiphany, like when I realized Santa wasn't real. I realized AA wasn't real and the entire thing shattered and I never went back. So I was never in AA when I knew it was bullshit. And I never heard it as bullshit when I was in it. There were a few cracks, like my friend dying and whatever else, that made me be like, what the fuck is this? But no, I didn't deprogram at all when I was inside like you were. I love that there's all different ways to do it.
Yeah, it's so unique. And that's why I think people, when they come into the group, need to have their space to do it. Because some come in and they're still going, and then everybody goes like, stop, you can't promote it. And I'm like, oh, they might be like, they really are on their way up, so don't beat them up here. If they're not a troll, because there are people who will come in and they're not trolling. They're really just asking questions.
Your Facebook group, right?
Yeah, sorry, inside the Facebook groups, which I created then another group, leaving AA, but still liking it, just try to figure this out and help them because it was hard for me, but it really got to feel really awful. And so I'm sitting there one day and thinking, really, have you seen a person fail who has thoroughly got their bad? Those of us who came out, and I was like, well, you're not even reading it normally. Like, why is that patter? And why is this nodding? They sit there like, you know, the old timer stupid face right there. And I'm like, so what do you, like is a message from God? And then you have like some woman with like 25 years who I really liked, who really made sense, who seems like she really has rational thinking going on, saying, I think these steps were like a gift from God. Like we're talking about Moses on the Mount or like Muhammad and Jesus. And I'm like, no. Like this guy stole whatever he could from every other religion. So I'm ready to leave. I know I'm like almost done. I think it was my second to last meeting. And who wants to read? Okay. I want to read chapter 5. Okay. So here I go. And I read it like a normal person. And it was so different that everybody started to like look at me and like, what's she doing? And I did it in one of my podcasts years ago, but you could see that I had it was like I don't know, like a big glass, just like shattering. And what I started to do was like 6 months, I said, okay, somebody said to me from one of the blogs, don't just leave. You have too much time. you're really invested, you're really stirring stuff up about the safety, go make a plan to leave. And I'm going to give you phone numbers. Yeah, like not leave, but a plan to leave. And then I'm going to give you the names of people who've left who had a ton of time too, Monica. One woman, 20 years, 10 years, 30 years, the guy who was on the board. So I started calling these people and talking to them. And I felt, oh my God, I'm not alone. I'm so validated. And they had different opinions. Like we didn't talk about cult stuff, but one guy told me how one of the guys in New York, he jumped off the building. I don't know, maybe you and I talked about this when we first connected, or maybe when we had coffee, that the guy in New York, so they told him to not take his meds. And this is when a lot of people were getting help from taking SSRIs and taking medication. And they were like, not. And he was like, that's when they all decided they were going to leave, like not be listed in the meetings and just, they were going to meet on their own, stop reading any of the literature and just support each other. But he jumped off, not off the roof, but out his window. And that family sued AA. But he said of the suits, like I actually went to the courthouse in New York when I was making the film to try to find stuff. But if stuff is sealed, I didn't have that kind of money and lawyers to lawyer up to. I don't know. Like I didn't. They were like, no, here's this and this and this and this, and I was like, okay. But that kind of stuff made me. I was just horrified. Like why wouldn't you be horrified? And so with all those people, I don't know. It began to really shake me to my core, and that how could I be involved in something like this? And I make the plan to leave. But in that process, I made everything else in my life a priority, sort of the opposite of what they tell you in AA. Like this comes before your husband, before your children? Like, no, I knew like that. But I only was going to one meeting a week, that women's meeting, every other week. As I was doing all the safety work, I started to get asked to speak, like all over. So then, of course, I'm going to more meetings because they're asking me to speak. And then I'm writing the literature and I'm bringing the safety literature with me. It was just too much and I needed to go. And I couldn't even make the 6 months. Like I remember saying to Kevin, like I would have to get up when they would read anything and go outside to the coffee place or where the cookies were or the carrot sticks or whatever somebody brought, or the peanut hummus chips. And I would just go out and I'd go to the bathroom and come, because that is part of the brainwashing. So if somebody's forced to go there, I would say to them, just always leave. Don't sit for the reading of the preamble. Don't sit for the held handing of the Lord's Prayer. Don't sit for how it works, or for when they read even the 12 traditions, because it's all bullshit. Like it really is. If you tear up that first chapter 5 with somebody, which I did with one woman, it's like really funny because it's so ridiculous, right? To drink is to die. That is not even one of the worst. By the time I left, I felt like I had really deprogrammed a lot. Like I was deprogramming. Those last 2 years were, and it was interesting because then my husband left, and I don't want to tell too much of his story, but like he was not even as involved, and yet he was like, well, what about, like, I was like, what, are you kidding? Like, let's go see a therapist. Like, let's go see, like, there was like really good guys here in town, like Mark Hearn, who founded Moderation Management. And we went to see him a couple times, and we called like somebody else. I think the head, I don't know if we called the head, Tom Horvath was the head of Smart Recovery. And then there was another guy, and then there were like about 5 people that were out along. Some of them were never in it. And they were PhDs, therapists, addiction, who hated AA, and then told us how they were ostracized and how they were not allowed to come into the addiction recovery community because they weren't. Oh yeah, Mark Hearn's story was like, it's really sad, really sad. Like, so anyway, I saw the brainwashing in him, but he was very open to talking to other people and felt very validated. Like he needed like to say, stop. Like people would say shit to him and they wouldn't dare say it to me, because I would, I'm me. Like they'd be like, oh yeah, she's going to give me hell. But Kevin is so sweet and so nice. Like they think they can just say shit to him. And he's like, somebody said, just put your hand up and go, I don't do that anymore. I don't do that anymore. I've moved on. And there are things that stop them in their tracks. They don't know what to do. And a year later, I said it was a cult. I was like, holy shit, this is a cult.
What helped you to realize it was a cult? Because I think that piece is so relatable that even when we leave, some of us are defensive about the cult thing. I didn't think it was a cult until 2 months ago.
Yeah, I know that was crazy when I realized with you that it was so recent. I found you and you were just like new, like you had just decided to do it and like you popped up and I was like,
I didn't, I
but,
couldn't not
right?
talk. I felt like I, I was suppressing it for so long. Like I needed to
Hmm.
explode. It was like all my inner guidance was saying, talk about it. But I was so afraid. I didn't want to do it. It was like, but something inside me, it just kept getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And so my 5 year anniversary of leaving AA, I was like, fuck it. If I don't use the momentum of the anniversary today to be like, not only am I gone, but it's been 5 years, bitches. So you can't say you're about to relapse. No, it's literally been 5 years. I'm 5 years sober from the cult. But I remember when we first spoke, you said that we had different views on AA, but I hadn't even realized at that point that AA was a religious cult, except I knew it was a
Mm.
religious cult before I ever went. And then they told me we're spiritual, not religious, and we're not a cult, but we need brainwashing. But then it wasn't until I started digging deep and really studying what the fuck a cult is that I was like, oh, and obviously a religion very basically is a path to God, and obviously AA is a path to God.
Yeah, but they are really strange because I was raised Catholic, and so this came up in my head. So I'm sitting there, one of my last few meetings, and I was told that I had free will. So Catholics teach, and maybe it's why the Catholic Church, the good part of it, not the predatory part, but said you had free will. You had a choice. You choose whether to go this way, or you're going to steal or not steal or whatever. But in AA, you're turning your will. You don't have free will then. You're going to turn your will and your life over the care of God. But isn't God busy with other shit? Like, what? Really? Like, he's going to be like micromanaging all of us? So there were things I never bought into, like absolutely never, all the years. Like I would say them in meetings. People would start doing that, and I'd say, sorry, children are never responsible for being abused. A woman or man, if you've been assaulted, it's not your fault. I don't care what you were wearing. This is the predator's fault, and you have no part in it. You have no part in it. And the whole children thing, I mean, it really like got me like, and so people really resonated that. I would go to meetings once in a while, and people would come up and say, oh my God, like, thank you. I have a sponsor who told me that. And I was like, wow, like that's really sick. That was like when my children were small and I was in therapy, like once a year I would go to a meeting and I would just like say, guess what, guys? I'm in therapy for childhood abuse work. What happened to me? And so I want to make sure that nobody's telling anybody here. Like I would just specifically go for that and then I would leave. Back to the part of when the cult, so I guess it would be, so you have the murder, then you have when the Carla Brada, then my brother-in-law hangs himself in New York. I go to that, I deal with that with my family. And then I come back, I'm taking the class, start making the film. I immediately start making the film and I go out. Oh yeah. Then there's this woman, Keeper, her son, and there's a short little piece in the film back on the East Coast. He was murdered by his sponsor. And this story, he was a was he 13? It's like one of those deliverance movies. Like, I'm telling you, some of these stories are in the smaller towns because everybody knows everybody since they've grown up. And now they're all adults. One guy's the cop, and the other guy's the bad guy selling meth over here in the mobile home, whatever. So she was the first person, she found me on Facebook, and she was the first person to say she would be filmed. And I met this young girl who went to film school and got the little camera and we filmed her. And then we caught the rapist in West Covina. That was also a big deal because they went crazy over the fact that we were going to do a workshop out there. And then we got this older woman to get the girl who was raped by him. And he had raped like numerous assaulted. It was more than assault because when it's rape, right? But it was like he had like 20 women in a house and it was called a sober living and the cops all knew, everybody knew about the house. People were trying to get that guy arrested. So the work that she and I did and other people, some really great men, I called the police and she brought her to the police and then the cops went like a movie and pulled right up to the, I forget what it was called. It's out of West Covina. It's a clubhouse. It was there forever. And the 3 or 4 cop cars pulled in, going to the meeting that was happening, and they pulled him out and arrested him. And then there was the trial, and all the AA people were there, and then the people who wanted him to be arrested. I didn't get to go to that, but so that when I watched the behavior of the people defending him, men and women, I said, wow, these people are really, sick. This is a really sick society. So that kind of did it. And then Carla Brada, I called her mother. I just looked her up on the internet and I called her. She answered the phone and I spoke to her mother and said, "Can I interview you?" And somebody said, "You better hire somebody who like you better film it right because like they're really important to the story in your film. You don't want to just take a little camera like I did when I went out to Colorado and I filmed the board member, Jim Branscombe. And he was like early in the beginning. And so talking to him, driving like 7 hours with a friend and like sitting there, and I just held the little camera and filmed him. That was like the cult, like some of the different aspects of it. Like each thing I did sitting person to person with people and interviewing them, I started to see connections. And then interviewing people like Tom Horvath for Smart Recovery and the people who created these other things, a lot of them were atheists. And so they really resisted that anything that was cultish. And so then I would get another viewpoint. Somebody's viewpoint came into my head and I was like, oh, yeah, that is kind of culty. And that's why one of the reasons why they don't all grow the way AA did was because A is always saying, you got to give it away to keep it. You got to give it away. It's like that. I think it was Lance Doty's book, The Sober Truth. Great book that came out. And when he left, I think was he at Mass General, some one of those big places back east, and he was going to just retire and not write about it. And his whole family said, no, 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 you have to write your opinion about Alcoholics Anonymous. He couldn't do it when he was there because they were all pro AA in like one of the biggest mental health hospitals in the country at the time. Like it was Mass General, I think it was, or Harvard. So I was with a woman who came with me to go all the way to Phoenix, and she stood up and started yelling at them that it's a cult. It's a cult. I said, could you sit down? Nobody going to talk to me now. Like nobody's going to come and tell me who are the male predators here. They're all just going to run when they see you and I coming. And then I got introduced to people who were, what do you call it, exposing cults. Like that was the beginning. And then Netflix like went crazy, like during with every cult, the Children of God, and this one. Oh my God! And so we were all watching those. Oh, you know what else too? Remember that HBO show where they did the whole thing on the Mormons? What the hell was the name of that? I'm sitting there. This is like before I really started to unravel. I say, Kevin, we're in a cult. I'm in the living room. He's in the kitchen, like rummaging around, and I'm watching it. What the hell's the name of that show? The one with, it doesn't matter, but it was all about the Mormons and he eventually got arrested. Remember the head of the Mormon church, the really bad guy? But it was watching that I did say it. I said, we're in a cult.
Wow.
Because
Yeah. So it
yeah.
sounds like a lot of your deprogramming work happened through making your film and digging in and doing the research, that active participation that you did, speaking to people, getting other perspectives, that really helped set you straight.
Yeah, and then going to meetings in other cities and other parts of the country, watching the behavior once you're stepped away from it, or even in the end for me, when I sat at a meeting and the rituals that went on there with the standing and my name is so and so, and I'm an alcoholic, and hi Monica. It started to feel like just like, please.
It works if you work it in, you're worth it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and taking other people in there, especially making the film and really being an outsider sitting out there and watching people who were forced to go, who didn't believe in it, and then finding out that nurses, doctors, a pilot contacted me, nurses contacted me. They're all treated horribly. The nurses, they did fight it up in Canada. There's a male nurse that fought it. He sued and he won. He was like sort of gagged, like so he couldn't talk on it anymore. But he fought about it. He won money. He did not lose his job. He had his job back. He could be a nurse again. But the doctors were just so afraid to talk. There maybe it's the personality of a doctor, compared to a pilot. Is more like a pilot. He's like a different kind of personality. And they're making some headway now, being forced to go to Alcoholics Anonymous forever as long as you fly. You have to be part of the HIMSS program. That's what happened. So it used to be 5 years. Okay. And the stories are unbelievable. That nurses told me that they were told to bring their sponsor to a meeting for the board to get their license back instead of like their husband or a family person. Like it's like I see your face, and if I have messages on my phone of like women just hysterical and sobbing about like some woman. This is one story that I was just like, I got to do more, and then maybe I called the board after that. So she wasn't even drinking at work. She just started to drink a little more at home because her husband cheated and left. And she happened to tell her coworker, I just was drinking too much after work, and she reported her. Like she was like drinking or taking drugs on the job. I was like, wow, like that's horrible. And and then when I met people in the making the film, people were really shocked about the stuff. Oh, everybody has a story. Oh, my uncle's sober 25 years. Oh, and then in the film business here, when I go to parties with Kevin, like they'd be like, oh, well, what's your movie about? And I'd say it, and then they go, "What? That saved my father's life, or that's helping my this person." And I was like, "Wow, okay."
Yeah.
So I was like, I better not even. But I couldn't help myself most of the time. I would have to say what I was making it about, and after a while, it just, what else are you going to say? Okay, it's about the recovery world, the rehab world. They'll leave you alone a little more if you say that. But God forbid if you touch that one, the sacred cow,
It,
which means it's a cult.
exactly. It's so weird too. I've talked about so many things on the internet. I've been on YouTube for over a decade, and nobody once
Mm,
cared about anything I said, like negatively. Nobody. But the
yeah.
minute you talk about a cult, it's like it just comes at you from every angle constantly, like.
Hmm.
So for me, it was a huge part of my, I guess, deprogramming, just to experience, to speak about it was very liberating because to
Yeah.
experience it from the outside. So I didn't experience it from the outside, meaning that I knew it was bullshit and still went to meetings. But to 5 years after I left, to have AAs coming at me with all the baloney in all the different ways, I was like, oh, wait, this is a cult. Like,
Yeah. So imagine inside people who once liked you, people who you were friends with since you were 18 and 19, turning on you, especially because I was making the film. And I was getting pretty hardcore with my opinions.
yeah,
And I wasn't like, oh, I'm just leaving. No, I'm leaving, and
yeah.
I'm going to expose you to the fullest.
They'd prefer you
Yeah.
to leave and shun you versus you leave and God forbid you speak. It's you leaving and speaking, now they have to harass you. They'll ignore you if
Yeah.
you just leave and pray for you.
Oh yeah, yeah. I was gonna say, yeah. I'll pray for you, Monica. I said, don't you even
Saving you
dare.
a seat.
Like, yeah, yeah, yeah. No, thanks.
It's
Yeah,
like literally, like you can't understand it when you're in there. But people were telling me, I'll save you a seat. That sounds to me the same way it might sound to them if you get let out of jail and then the person in your cell says, I'm saving your bed for you. It's like, bro, I don't want the seat. Like,
wow. Yeah, yeah. Really. And then you remember all those people, maybe all the years that you were in that were never really into it. Those looks on those faces, the people forced to go, the people sort of standing, sitting in the back, the people who maybe liked you, but no thanks. I'm not going to a 12 and 12 meeting. We're going to study
yeah.
the steps book. Oh man, when I tore that one up, like when I went back and looked through like the 12 and 12, it was just like this, it was such a mind fuck. And I visited the place where he wrote Stepping Stones up in
Same.
beautiful Westchester County. Did you go there
Yeah,
too?
his office.
Did you go there?
They told me that his office that was up on the hill, the enclosed little space, was called, he called
Yeah,
it Wits
yeah.
End. So he'd say, I'm going to go be at my wits' end.
I really would like it to just go away, to just go away, and let smart recovery and plant-based medicine and mindfulness combined with the other things that could really help people. I think it's really harmful because since leaving, I don't know anybody until recently, somebody I know who is an ex-stepper. I don't know how her son died, but it happened really recently. And it's just super sad. But I don't know anybody who's committed suicide. They were all in AA. My years from 1975 to whatever the hell year, what did I leave in 2011? And I'm really, I hate saying the word grateful, but I'm really appreciative of that when I had kids, that I pulled away so much and just knew instinctively that I didn't need to go to meetings. I had a lot of time and I was fine. And I needed therapy. I needed real therapy by then. And I needed to cry and I needed to become more vulnerable and I needed to get out my rage for what had happened to me as a kid.
Mhm.
And yeah, so I'm really thankful. And the language, okay, so that was another thing that helps you realize it's a cult is special language. We see it now in government, like you see when people are getting lunatic on whatever side, special language going on all the time now. And so with AA, it was like when you learn about, I guess, cognitive behavioral therapy, that or extreme, everything's so extreme about AA. It's not just to drink is to die, but thank God all this stuff is not in my head so easily to bring back the slogans.
Or even like untreated alcoholism and dry drunk and alcoholic thinking, literally making up terms to
Yeah.
pathologize any mood, any emotion, any thought that we have that is outside of being obedient to the ideology. God forbid you're
Hmm.
angry. That is a character defect. That is a danger zone. No, it's called being a human, bro. What do you want? You want like a
Right.
indoctrinated robot?
Yeah. 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 And that's one that I actually fought about for the whole time I was sober, was about being angry was really healthy and stop saying that. Like that's nonsense. And so there were pieces, there were some pieces of me that just would not give in to what I read in the book and knew that they were just plain horseshit because and then in the last few years, I was like, you are the most angry group of people I have ever seen. They are a really angry group of people. I started to see that in like years before I left. I was like, damn, you guys are like really angry. And how many of you are married even? You're not even in a relationship. And where are your children? Like, how come you don't have a relationship with your children? Like, you could see the really sick side of not being able to have partners and to have relationships that were long lasting, or even with their children. They're like 30 years sober and they're still like running, making it to be a speaker down in. I met people that were heartbroken that their parents, they were these successful, normal kids, but they weren't sober in AA children. And so they made that whole world of like the Clancy and the Pacific group more important than their own kids. And that wakes you up too.
Yeah.
I like every aspect of what came at me made me really see how bad it was.
I'm wondering if somebody is watching this because maybe they've seen your film, which I'll link below. They've seen your film, The 13th Step, and they're dealing with this right now in AA, or they've dealt with this in AA. How could somebody who's struggling with this, what's something that they can do? What would be the recommended? I know that's not like your role, you are a filmmaker and other things. How would you point them to get help if they're being preyed upon in AA or their friend is?
About the predation.
Yeah.
I think if something is a crime, like really try to look at something if it's a crime. That sexual harassment in any setting is it's not a crime in AA, but it is in the workplace. They also are using a church or a building that they have rules about insurance laws for to get insurance, to have like there were meetings in like a Chase building in the west part of LA. Like they could get into real trouble. Now when they're in churches, they're going to get away with more stuff until when you know your stuff. I mean, you could DM me and send something to make AA safer at gmail.com. And you could link that, make AA safer at gmail.com. But there were a lot of things that were done in sober livings and rehab,
Mm-hmm.
and that's criminal. It's civil. It's going to be civil unless they raped you or assaulted you. So go to the police and take somebody with you. A lot of people wouldn't. I said I would fly. I was going to fly to any city to help some woman or man go to the police. And so many people said, I can't do it. And I was like, I had to learn how to let that go.
Yeah.
I would say to people, there's a couple of Is it the Center for Motivation and Change out of New York? Super sane group. They have like counseling. He wrote a book, Beyond Addiction, and Jeff Foot, and it's got a couple of the names on it. And that's for people who actually love somebody. But I think Smart Recovery, the booklets, like looking into other ways that have helped people that have nothing, that are so polar opposite to AA, they really help you. It just can make you feel sane. I thought about this as people in the last 6 months, and you've been around for how many months now? Have you been like talking in the group?
4 or 5.
How long has it been now?
April 6th, so 4 or 5 months.
Yeah, so it feels like right before you came, there were a lot of like new people coming into the group. And it's not like hundreds of thousands of people, but if everybody who was harmed reported anything that was a crime, whether it's civil or an assault crime, things could really get escalated. And I did a petition years ago, and then I learned you got to send it to New York, and you got to like the activism part, like that's a whole nother thing. And we could never really get quite organized. I did some of it, I learned some of it, but I think that it's just really hard because they were like, well, we're not connected. Call New York. Okay, this is what we got all the time. Like it's like such a mind fuck. And yet I cleaned out my whole film and all my A stuff, and I saved the famous upside down triangle. Well, New York is connected to the group. Why do you have a GSR? So stop saying that the groups are autonomous. So the groups are autonomous except the matters affecting A as a whole. Well, if you have a GSR that's connecting you to GSR in New York, I mean to GSO in New York, or then you're connected. Like it's like saying I have a soccer team that's part of the big ASO or whatever that is. We're separate, and you're not separate. It would be like one church down the street, like St. Thomas is separate from the whole Catholic Church. No, it's not. So AA has played that game, and people just believe it. They buy into it, and not realize that absolutely not. And call New York and say this has to stop. Now, I do think the world has changed. I do think the world has changed since 2017 and the Me Too, which went, I think, way overboard. It needed to happen. But then you were like, okay, like, I can't even, no one's going to say, oh, you look pretty today, Monica. Nobody's going to open a door for a woman again. But if everybody started calling and everybody started making an email to them, what I did learn is this is a really key piece. You send a letter, if you're going to do it, you send a letter that to CC the board, they must by law read it to the board. And boards can get scared. They can get afraid of what's going on, and they might resign from the board, which Jim Branskin did, and so did the journalist from Canada. When my letter came and the way they reacted to our letters, not just my letter, but my whole group of women in my women's group, they all wrote letters. And so they were like, whoa. He said they acted like they were all mental, really mental. And it was really inappropriate. And these are professionals that are there. There are judges on their board. They intentionally select judges and these people to make influence. And so there could be other stuff done, but I just got tired. I got breast cancer. I had to deal with that. I had family issues. And I had a son who had issues with stuff. And then I went down this whole wonderful rabbit hole of plant-based medicine and how it cures problematic alcohol use and how the other ones, I want to say cure with that, but really help people who have addiction with opioids. And so I went down that whole world of plant-based medicine, and we could have another talk about that, and I've used it myself, I did it myself, and watched it work. And then I really wanted to be like, let's tell the whole world, and began making my second film. It was like the second part about Rehab Riot is what we were going to call it. But then it was more about what are the things that do work? What are the new modalities that are helping people today? And then COVID came, and I just like, I gave up. I was just like, okay, next.
It's a big project.
Yeah, and I would never do it again alone. It would have to be money backed from Netflix, a big platform with an experienced seasoned producer. If I didn't direct it, it would be a partnership, but I would never do what I did. It was really hard. And it takes money. It takes a lot of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not more than money. But it's an important topic. Like, we're still dealing with these problems. And I see that unless we get AA out of rehab, we are going to stay in this cycle. But I feel like I did my part. And I think there's more. Maybe hand the candle, somebody else will do it. Or maybe I would. It's somehow, like, even seeing you and the other young woman burn the stigma. Is that it, right? Is it burn the stigma?
Yeah.
And then there's Bobby C. And then there's another guy who's been doing them for like 10 years. Anonymous.
Backaholics Anonymous.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
so great.
And,
yeah.
And he's great. Like, he sat on that couch for years and with that great accent where you think he's from the East Coast. And people didn't realize how much he helped people. I feel like with you especially, and with the other young woman, that there is a renewed, and Bobby Seed also seems like he just doesn't, he's not going to stop. Like, he feels this need to speak. And although I think you are the closest with her to maybe become viral if you, with what you're doing, to reach like hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, that there will be a, something will happen from it. Like, it was like the wave, that like there is another wave that's happening with your work and her work. And then me also kind of having the energy again to do something where, you know, especially I see you look emotional.
It makes me want to cry. Yeah. That just really hit me. I really just, I guess that's exactly the metaphor that I use in my own mind to like describe what I feel like is happening right now, and what my part in this is the wave has not crashed yet. And I'm on the crest that's already been there for a while, that you've been trailblazing and other people and people in the 90s. There's so many books I'm reading from people in the 90s. I feel like I've been tapped on the shoulder to help bring this wave even closer. And I don't know when it's going to crash, but that's exactly, like, just spiritually or metaphorically, the same thing happened with me. I feel confident about that. And I've never talked about this, but I feel very, like, I feel it so deeply, like in my soul. That's why you saw me about to cry. The same thing happened to me in 2017. I felt like I got tapped on the shoulder or smacked in the face, like, that you need to go talk about sexual assault. You need to talk about childhood sexual abuse. And I knew it at the depth of my being that I need to break up with my boyfriend, leave Bali, and go to America. And I need to spread this word out about this, because people who have childhood sexual abuse and then declining mental health, like for me, it was anxiety disorders, and then they move into alcohol addiction. Like, we need to wake up sooner, because there's all the re-victimization. And I just felt it so strongly. And I felt like I was on a wave that was about to crash, but it hadn't crashed yet. And I came out trembling. And I remember, like, with my little niece, we went to, actually, she's not little anymore. She graduated the week that I met you for coffee, right?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
But this was in 2017. We were taking her to Las Vegas for a Britney Spears concert. Love Britney. And I finally had the courage to start talking about sexual abuse. I'd never talked about it in my life. And now I went live on Facebook, and I just started talking about it because people needed to. I just felt compelled to talk about this thing that was so hard to talk about. And then what happened in, like, October, November? Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I felt, and then right after, like a week after Me Too, is like when I got my TED Talk, which was about childhood sexual abuse, mental health,
oh, wow.
and addiction.
You have a TED Talk.
It was it was all at the same time, but that came from the depth of me. It was like, I can't do this, but I can't not do this. And it felt like a spiritual thing, like a calling, or something bigger than me needed to happen. And I was a part of it. And it felt like a wave. And then when Me Too happened, I was like, I knew it. I knew I was on a wave that was about to crash. Like, that's why what you're saying makes me, like, emotional, because that's how I feel right now. I feel like enough of us are getting tapped on the head to talk about it, that it is, something is going to crash. And it's to me, this time, it's like, it's not just sexual assault awareness, but which is huge, obviously, but it's recovery awareness about, not even to get rid of AA. AA doesn't need to go away. Just, can we know what it is when we go? Like, if you want to go to this...
warning.
If you want to read about what it is, and everybody knows what it is, just like, when you take anti-abuse, it's going to be violent. But you take it anyways because there's a benefit, right? Or the ones that do. So as long as we know what it is, that's what I feel like I'm on a crest of. I feel like spiritually... I didn't know I was going to rant right now, but I feel like spiritually there's a crest, and that people are getting tapped on the shoulder, if you will, to like make this like, because people are dying, people are getting harmed, people are losing years or decades of their life. People are like losing family members to the cult, not necessarily even the ones that die, but the friends and families who get sucked in and then out of their lives. It's I really feel like it's going to change. Instead of, you can't talk about your film because AA saved my dad's life, it's going to be like, thank you for talking about your film and making your film, because my friend who I lost to AA popped out and I have my friend back now. Like that, I feel like that's going to change. I don't know. I don't want to be naive and say it's going to happen soon, but like, I just feel like that's what's happening in the cultural consciousness. That's what's going on. That is my deepest hit on this stuff.
Yeah, I think that if you could be, thank you for all that. That that if a warning, which is what I wanted, was a warning that they would read before every meeting, that there are predators. Imagine that. Like, there's sexual predators, court ordered
Oh
here.
yeah.
Violence and sexual predators, people who have domestic violence, are sitting in these meetings just as well as your teacher and a cook and a teacher
Yeah.
or whatever. The card that they made was something, but not good enough. And when I say that I want to get rid of it, I want to get rid of it. No, I don't. I don't want to spend my time doing that. But I would like to see it slowly shrink.
Sure.
But I don't. I'm not upset enough about it that I feel any kind of that I'm going to fight with somebody about it. Oh yeah, no,
Right.
it's okay. It really is okay. We're doing the work and we're doing the awareness, and what you're doing is huge. It's just huge, and it feels like a relief because I felt like I was like, and I know I wasn't the only one out there, but it's really good to know, to see it, to just really see it. And I'm going to look forward. I didn't know you did stuff like way back when in that area with sexual abuse and child abuse. I will watch. So all of this is on your channel, your same channel,
Well,
or is
the
it?
TED Talk's on Ted's YouTube channel, but it's
Yeah.
called "The Secret That Almost Killed Me," or just type in Kirsten Johnson TED Talk.
Okay.
But yeah, I just felt like we don't know about this, and I finally just had the awareness
Yeah.
of, oh my God, my childhood trauma is, and that specifically nobody ever wants to talk about childhood sexual abuse. I get it. It's hard,
Right.
it's disgusting, and it's happened to a lot of us. And
Yeah.
so I just felt like if we don't talk about it, it's keeping the problem in place, which means that it's happening to more people. They're getting re-victimized. They're having all these mental health things that they're going to medicate with
Yeah.
doctors or with alcohol. Then they're going to end up, well, I didn't know it was literally, I was in AA when I gave my TED Talk. So it was 500 people in the audience, and the front row on the right was like 20 people that were all there to support me, my sponsor, my sponsees, my family members.
No.
It was like all AA. They were like, yeah. And you'll hear it, because in the beginning I say, in the recovery world, we say you're as sick as your secrets.
Okay, so I'll be triggered. No.
But it's not about
Appreciate.
AA ideology. But I was
Right.
in
Right. Right.
AA when I
Right.
gave the talk. The talk has
Right.
nothing to do with AA. It has to do with waking up to a deeper healing that I wish. I've just felt like I want to be who I needed, because so much of my life I have felt like I've silently suffered because there was nobody there to guide me out of the fuckery that I was in, because society wasn't evolved to a place where it was an obvious thing. So like when I was being traumatized, like Gen Z today, they know about therapy and trauma, and but we didn't know about any of this stuff. And
That's
so
right.
as society like wakes up, even the first time that I talked about being sober on the internet, I did it literally on my 5-year sober birthday, which was in 2014. And at that time, there was still so much shame around being sober that it was so hard for me to say that. I also said that year, 2014, that I had anxiety, that I had all these anxiety disorders that I had worked through.
Yeah.
And that was so hard for me to say because it was still so in the dark. Now it's not. You can
Right.
say, a
Right.
couple years later, it was like sober sexy. I'm like, sober sexy? What the fuck?
Yeah. Right.
And so
Yeah. It's really changed.
things are changing right now with talking about leaving AA. There's a lot of people feel really empowered to leave very honest comments, not just in private Facebook groups or private groups,
Yes.
but all over social media, and not in hidden
Uh-huh.
anonymous like Reddit threads or whatever. But people are
Right.
like, they're pissed off. They've lost years. They've lost self-esteem. They've lost friends. They've lost
Yeah.
dignity, whatever it is, and people are mad. And I feel like, I feel like it's going to tip at some point, just like the Me Too thing.
I think so. Yeah. I hope so. You know.
And for
I,
whatever fucking reason, I feel like I'm supposed to I guess for me, where it comes from is, so I got assessed as autistic and ADHD after leaving AA, and that explains like my whole life for me, is that I've always just been so different that I'm actually really fucking different. Like my sensory system is so hypersensitive that I'm like,
Mm.
I had synesthesia. I knew nobody else was having synesthesia, which is where your senses are mixed. Like when I used to go to the rave in the 90s, I would literally see the music as I was dancing to it. I was like one with inside the music, sober,
Wow.
like not on a psychedelics, but I was having
Yeah,
a
yeah.
psychedelic like experience. And
Right,
so my
right.
sensory experience has always been different. And so part of my differences and not knowing about them is that I've always had social differences, communication differences, and I've always felt, now that I understand it, almost gaslit by the world, because the world, no matter where I went, reflected to me that I was wrong. What you're seeing isn't real. What you're sensing isn't real. What you're perceiving isn't real. Your perceptions are not real. So it wasn't like
Yeah.
intentional gaslighting. My nervous system is just so different than the majority
Wow.
of the people. So my
Hmm.
deepest trauma, I used to think it was the childhood sexual abuse, but I've come to see it. No, it's being globally gaslit. No matter where I go in the world, most of the people are letting me know that I'm wrong essentially because I'm different. I'm having a different. Okay, you're not seeing the music. It doesn't mean that I'm wrong that I am.
Yeah,
If you other me, like we put how you are as the right way, then yeah,
yeah,
I'm wrong. But why are you fucking right and I'm wrong, right? But what it did
yeah.
was it led to an insecurity. Also because my social differences, sensory differences, you end up being easy prey for predators. They see the one who's socially different and they target the autistic girls. So autistic
Hmm.
typical girls are 1 in 3 are sexually abused by the time they're 18. Autistic girls, 9 out of 10 are sexually abused, 3 times more likely to get sexual abuse. And it's already really high for typical girls.
Oh my God.
90% of autistic girls are sexually abused by the, and then I think it's something like 70% of them are re victimized. Autistic women
Terrible.
are 13 times more likely to die by suicide than non autistic women. And I think it's because of the buried trauma. So, my biggest trauma is having the world constantly tell me that my experience of life is wrong, no matter, like,
Yeah.
constantly. So, what that's done for me is I think that's why I'm like, no, I have to talk about this stuff because it's so deep in me. Like, where it
Hmm.
all comes from. So it's almost like, if we're going to use cult language, a living amends to myself. It's like I'm going to speak the truth, you know, because or
Yeah,
what
yeah,
I think
yeah,
is true for the other people like
yeah.
me who are being gaslit. No, it is a fucking cult. Yes, you were abused and like yes, like this is the truth. Like it took me a long time to figure out. I almost didn't make it. It almost killed me, but I made it through. It's the truth. You can trust yourself. You know what happened to you. Yes, it feels wrong. The group is culty. You can leave. You're not going to die if you leave. Because something so deep at the core of me is like, we deserve to know the truth. Like, we do. I don't know. I
Yeah,
didn't know I was going to get
yeah,
so raw with you here today, but I appreciate your friendship. So maybe that's why I feel comfortable.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
such a
No, I appreciate
driver.
it. It's really that's really hard. That's really hard. I'm sorry. That's a lot of stuff to deal with, you know.
Well, we all have our reasons for wanting to speak the truth,
Yeah,
right? You have your reasons for wanting to
yeah,
bring the truth.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's the people who so there was a period I got so many emails from people. That's how people connected with me. And I couldn't believe how many people never had one person hear them and not blame them and gaslight them. Like that I was the first person to say, like, oh my God, that's terrible. I'm like, the stories were brutal. They were uh, just unbelievable. And that I was just compassionate listening because that doesn't go on. Maybe today it goes on in I don't know, but that's not what they teach there is compassionate listening. And I learned that in therapy. And uh, it was very healing for me to be able to have that happen with some strangers who then became friends or friendly. And I think that we are like, there was this one image when you were talking like earlier about what I would see in LA with the homeless situation, say when it was at its height of the worst during COVID, and there would be young men who I knew were thrown out of a sober living just because they tested negative. These guys were not criminals. I could see by their clothing, I could see by their age, by their backpacks. And I talked to too many mothers whose kids were dead because they got thrown out and on the street, and then their family also threw them away. And that was heartbreaking. Like there was like this thing of like, this has to stop. What families do to their kids, that they buy into this bullshit of the scared straight program, or the tough love thing, and don't let them come back home, and they have to be like 90 days sober where they can't smoke pot, when actually cannabis can really help as a harm reduction tool for some, maybe not in the beginning, or maybe in the beginning I would see them and I'd be like, that could be my son, or that could be my child, you know. And then I met that woman who exposed the rehab and sober living here in West LA, and we did it. We, you know, got them shut down. And I think for you, like, you have this other component that you're dealing with. I certainly understand the child sexual abuse and being assaulted as a teenager, and getting good therapy, like
Mm.
really incredible therapy. And even when I went to Costa Rica recently, when I went last September, and I did psilocybin again, but I did all this other trauma work that had nothing to do with any medicine. They have those, like, this lights that they have that somebody brought from like Europe, and then there was a breath that where you like do that breathing, rapid breathing stuff. And but there was, you know, really incredible healing that happened as well, not without any plant-based medicine.
Yeah.
I think it's sad that it's still. I remember my neurosurgeon, who I had a brain tumor and taken out in 2012. Thank God it was just meningioma; it wasn't cancer. It was like right this part of my head. So they drilled me open and took it out, and it
Wow.
was like this big. But he has been doing studies since 2020 to get psilocybin legal to help with problematic alcohol, end of life, fear, and depression. That it works.
Yeah.
And it's not a game, and it's not a party drug. Like, okay, people, I never used it for that. That people did a long time ago, and mescaline and stuff, but that this is a real medicine, and that it's sad that it's now 5 years later and the FDA has not approved it. But I think, well, I don't know. I just hope, right? I
Yeah.
don't know, because but look at, I don't know. I really appreciate you having me on.
Yeah.
I really
Well,
do.
everybody has their different healing path too, and that's why I think it's so important to trust our gut. And that would be my only advice to anybody, is to trust your gut, because I know my path by trusting my gut. I trust what feels right to
Hmm.
me. And that's
Yes.
what I think everybody should do, whether it's cannabis, psilocybin, breath work, nothing, yoga, AA, whatever. I don't know. Like, I would certainly never recommend anybody to go to AA, but if their gut is,
Hmm.
they feel like they need to go, then go. Like, trust yourself. Whatever you do, I think you should trust yourself, and I'm not going to override anybody trusting themselves.
Yeah.
But what I really love about what you've done with your group is, it's created a place for people to meet each other and be validated. Because for me, that's the first step in healing.
Hmm.
It's being able to realize that what you feel is accurate. Like, it's okay to
Yeah.
leave. You can talk about it. You can be angry. You can be happy. You
Yes.
can be
Yes.
all of the
Uh-huh.
things. You can be pissed. You can still be waking up and like in that what the fuckery, and like, and wherever you are. And I found your group 6 months after I left AA. So I left April 2020, and I found your group. I joined like September or October, I think. And so it really
Yeah.
was cool for me to drop in there. And I didn't say a goddamn word until 5 years later when I came. I didn't talk about getting sober on the internet until 5 years after I got sober. I didn't talk about leaving AA
Wow.
until 5 years. I'm a slow burner but when
That's
I
wild.
explode, I
Yeah.
fucking explode and I won't shut up. But it
Yeah.
takes me a while to like build up, and whatever that is. I don't know. Everyone's different. But your group for me was a really cool place to land and just hear what everybody was saying. And I had already found the orange papers, which were such an
Hmm.
unlock for me. So anybody who's listening or watching, definitely Google
Yeah.
orange papers. It is a huge unlock. And but then when I found your group, it was like even though I wasn't talking in there, I was listening. I would go in there every day and listen. And that was like my little hit
Wow.
of like my reality check to ground me. And yeah, I can trust myself because I've been thinking a lot of these things and feeling a lot of these things for a long time, even though I don't have
Yeah.
many friends who have left AA that I can chat with. Although
Yeah.
all of my sponsees, all three of them, they slowly, within a matter of months of me telling them that I left, then they started asking why, and I would only answer their questions. That was like my thing for myself, because
Yeah.
I'm not gonna
Yeah.
try and change anyone's mind anymore. Like, what the fuck?
Right.
No
Right.
more
Yeah.
program.
I know. It's not right.
But I'll answer
Hmm.
your questions like, well, what about this? What about this? I'm like, oh yeah, that's bullshit. Here's how I feel. So I really appreciated your group and being a fly on the wall. So being a fly on the wall
Oh,
is where a
God.
lot of us are, and that was a part of my journey, was just to listen for years.
Wow, that's pretty cool. It makes me feel warms my heart. I mean, it does, to know that that's there. I think it's pretty cool. I'm glad it was there for you. And I mean, I did it for me too. I needed to connect with other people, but I wanted people to be validated, to be heard, and a place where they could get angry about it because there was no other place. And that's the only thing I wouldn't tolerate there. If somebody comes in angry, you got to let him be angry.
Yeah.
And that we have that, so it's good. Um, but yeah, uh, so.
Oh, is there anything that we didn't cover yet that you feel would be an important message to somebody who's leaving or just left AA and is a bit freaked out?
I'd say if you could talk to a professional,
Mhm.
and we did. I mean, I didn't need it, but my husband did, so I went with him, and it was kind of cool to be validated there by somebody with a PhD. You gotta like interview them. You gotta be like, how do you feel about AA? Like straight up. What do you think about rehab groups? I thought it was really, really helpful to do that, even one time or two times, and read some books. I think that there's my film, there's One Little Pill that Claudia Christian made, there's The Rehab. What's that called? It was a rehab movie. He didn't get distribution either. The Business, Rehab Business or something like that.
Yeah.
The Business of Rehab. That was a really good movie too. So there's three of those. I got a whole closet full of books here that I put up. The Beyond Addiction, The Sober, US of AA. What a good book. That book, did you read that one yet?
Uh,
The US of AA?
Most of it. I've read most of it, and I heard your podcast.
Yeah,
I
it
heard
was
your
YouTube, so I'm
YouTube on
glad I
it.
did that with
I
him.
heard your YouTube on it. Yeah.
I blasted through that. The Freedom Model, people are getting a lot of help from that. Yeah, I would say, read a handful of books. Watch, and now you have all these YouTubes that are just, incredible. So that's all I would say. And trust, like you said, just trust your instincts. Get professional help if you feel like you need it. And I think one of the biggest things that's made me not feel alone is to find normal people that are my friends now in my life, whether they're my swim buddies that I've made through the COVID crazy rules down here, that are real friends. And I kind of ironically, because I was such a stepper, I was like, I learned how to like work. What do I need to do to create new friendships in this? I seem like I like her and I like these other ladies and this guy. And can we do something together and invite people to do something together outside of the pool or to make those connections that it's not forced, that there were these natural friendships or groups, whether someone's like one bookkeeper said, oh yeah, I do knitting with this group, or there's yoga, but the pool thing has been great, making connections with new people that can be your friends. They're actually your real friends. Because in AA, so that is a false intimacy. That is one thing that I am very, very sure of. There is a lot of false sense of intimacy there because you are sharing really inappropriate shit. As well as, like, that's why Brad Pitt goes on like he does. I'm like, what are you talking about? You're with like seven guys up in the Mulholland with the 8,000 square foot house, and everything is going to be. If you went to a real meeting, whether it was like it's 80 people, you would go. You guys are crazy, or maybe you would. I don't know.
Right.
I don't
And
know.
without the status, because you walk in as Brad Pitt,
Yeah,
you're walking in with more status than even the old timers.
no status. You can't come, and that doesn't happen. And then there's some of them, like I think it was uh, Robert Downey Jr. was kind of ostracized. Like he went to meetings where people were like, "Oh," and then they didn't treat him like normal because he was such a star. And so some of them, like I was at a meeting, was like, "Oh my God, there's that guy!" Like I was in a meeting in Hawaii where the poor guy like ran away because and they wouldn't just let him come in and like, be one of the people. It's either this or that, but they're not going to really know what it's like to be a regular person
Totally.
in an AA meeting,
Totally.
right?
Yeah.
Mm-mm. Um, Thank you so much for having me
Yeah,
on.
this was so
Yeah.
fun. And it was so fun to just start a friendship with you and then to be able to meet up with you in person and get a
I
coffee and
know.
chat. And I think we were there 2 hours and then you drove me back to my hotel. We were chatting in your car for like another half an hour and I could have talked to you for another day or two or 10. And
Yep.
it was so fun just to be
Yeah, it
honest,
was.
authentic, all over the place. It was so fun to connect with you. I really appreciate
And I
you.
think, me too. I appreciate you. I'd love to have you on my podcast now that I'm finally saying, screw it. It doesn't look perfect yet, but I'm just going to continue on.
Yeah,
So
for
we'll have you on mine.
forward action. I love that. I love that so much. I love you. Thank you so much for coming
I
on
love you. Thank
and
you.
sharing
Thank
your
you so
story.
much.
I really appreciate you as a human, as a friend, and also as somebody who helped light a torch for me when I was in the hardest time of my life, like leaving AA. So I appreciate you on all the levels. And it's just so fun to vibe with you. So thank you so much for coming on the Sobriety Bestie podcast today.
Thank you. Thank you, Kirsten. I appreciate it.
All right.
Take care.
Bye.
All righty.